Okay, this is a presentation I want to put together for parents um, to go over just energy availability and body composition testing and the importance of it. So, a lot of the info I'm taking from is from a review article done by Gatorade Sports Science and also a article done by a Penn State researcher in 2012. She basically looked at the whole Penn State women's soccer team. She measured their intake as well as their training expenditure, and then used research from just previous research in the field to look at this interrelationship between basically metabolic health, um, bone density, and then energy availability, and classified them based on that criteria in certain categories. And then she did a really good job of logging or giving players logs to help kind of frame when student athletes were missing meals. And then, so after this, I'm just going to explain metabolism, how it kind of boils down to some factors. So, height, weight, age, gender, and then like physical activity or really training load, which could be a myriad of things, right? The amount of decelerations you have in practice, accelerations, um, the amount of high intense, jumps or kicks, all kind of play into that. But really boils down to those five factors. So next, I'm just going to talk about testing and kind of go down the line of the gold standard, and then go down to what we can really use. So really, what body composition is your body and what it's composed of. So we have fat mass and then lean body tissue. Fat mass is mostly just fat. Lean body mass is made up of your organs, skeleton, muscle, water that's in the muscle. Um, and so it's made up of a mix of some things. Here's a DEXA scan. You lie on this, and then this thing over here fans and scans your whole body, gives you a really good picture, accurate on your fat mass and your fat-free mass. And then next, I guess after DEXA scan would be this bod pod. So you go in there, usually have all your clothes off, use this cap, and then it uses air displacement. So it's like has a process where you get in there, kind of locks, takes out all the air, and then measures kind of what's left over. So it just uses displacement method. It's pretty quick and easy, and it's a little bit cheaper than the DEXA scan. I've gone in there without this cap, just kind of forgot it, and it throws your numbers off completely, right? So it's really, really focused on accuracy and doing, the right things. I know before we had a protocol also that we kind of fasted, right? So the point is these first two sort of modalities are not as user friendly. So that kind of leaves us with BIA, which stands for bioelectrical impedance. Um, so BIA works off sending low levels of energy throughout your tissues, and then it kind of gauges where the electricity moves faster, and that's kind of where there's more muscle mass, so it's able to gauge an estimate off that. And so while this isn't the most accurate, right, it's not as good as a DEXA or a BOD pod. It's very user friendly. It takes very little time. It's not invasive at all. Clients or athletes don't have to, kind of change their clothes or anything like that, or put a cap on. Um, and so it's really good. And this is just a more user friendly. It's easy to blind participants and coaches, so researchers and participants, to this idea, which I've done before, and that's kind of what I want to explain to parents and coaches is it's easy to use, and then it's easier to blind participants in. And then so next, this is kind of looking more at the literature. Um, and just points out the importance of measuring body composition. So the reason why we really need to measure body composition, in my opinion, is obviously because if we get into the state where we've gone below 30 calories of lean body mass, we start to see some really bad health outcomes. But also, we see, and we've in the Penn State study they cited that they didn't really see any changes at all, any significant changes in body composition over the season, even when they compared between players who were in a good classification for energy availability, so above that 30 calories of lean body mass versus below. And they kind of theorized that it partly has to do with adaptations in resting metabolic rate. So this is a good kind of quote right here. It says, an energy deficient athlete may maintain normal body mass to physiological adaptations such as decreased resting metabolic rate. Thus, an athlete can be weight stable yet energy deficient. So for me, that really just points out the importance of getting kind of being more serious about measuring and screening risk, measuring right, not just overall body mass, but measuring the constituents and at least getting repeatable numbers on that. And then kind of over here just points to what they found. This is specific to the Penn State study. Right, they just kind of point out the same thing: increases and decreases in non-exercise associated activity thermogenesis have been observed in a state of positive and negative energy balance, respectively. Changes in these parameters of energy balance, together with training adaptations, could have contributed to the lack of changes in body weight observed. So, despite changes in our energy availability and our soccer players, so right, it just goes to show like um, the importance of measuring the actual constituents of body composition. Because if we don't understand where our athletes are at in terms of risk, it puts coaches in a precarious position. Um, and that's just something we definitely do not want to do. So I just believe that getting good numbers on this is definitely a valid thing to do. So in the Penn State study, they used 3-day logs to measure intake with the student athletes. They did a really good job of finding out which eating occasion, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, was lowest amongst athletes in the lowest criteria of energy availability. They basically found that athletes struggled at lunch the most. Okay, so I think this is something that can be implemented right away, and is not too hard. It's not too invasive. I would want athletes to be tracking their weight in the weight room, their weight that they put on the bar, and other parameters such as frequency, intensity, time, the type of the exercise, volume, and progression on a sheet. And so I don't think it would be too hard for dedicated athletes um, to put some sort of log of intake that you could do either like bi-monthly, bi-weekly, on some sort of consistent semi-consistent basis, whether that's once a season or twice a season. I think that's a doable thing that holds value here, just to hold athletes accountable to intake. And then lastly, I think it just really highlights the importance of nutrition and culture. So I think that athletes really need to like understand that nutrition is a part of kind of that whole team. Like you can't just leave nutrition to the side. It's super important. for culture, and that's obviously what I've been trying to build here. Um, and so figure on the left here is from that Penn State study, shows energy availability throughout the season, shows it in postseason in the middle of the season, C here, where it's lowest. Um, Shows that obviously availability is lowest there, and that has a direct relationship with um, the amount of responsibility and um, sort of autonomy that you give the athlete. So there's a relationship between um, sort of the amount of responsibility you give them, leeway you give them, and the intake. So I think that's where culture and accountability can come in obviously all positive manners. But I think if we can get athletes to be really positive around nutrition, and like I know some sports already do like pasta parties and stuff like that, doing stuff like that, um, and just like emphasizing having healthy intake can be a super super positive thing. And this is just kind of another thing from that Penn State study. Perhaps nutritional strategies aimed at increasing intake during meals, in particular lunch, or eating meals together as a team, either before or with sufficient time after exercise training, might prevent the low energy availability observed in some of the athletes. So again, that just for me goes to point that holding athletes accountable to intake is absolutely essential and valid, because again, you can't be naive and think that all athletes are going to get an appropriate level of intake, because even at the Division I level, they observed over a quarter, they observed about 27-26% of athletes were classified at that really really low energy availability. So it just goes to show that you can't really just be naive and think athletes are going to be responsible enough to get meals in. Um, and then I think that it'll put coaches in a better position in terms of how you can gauge player load and across the season how we can maybe tail off if certain parts of the year are hard. You can kind of make practices easier, and we can just see better health outcomes for all athletes. And also performance, right? Like you can probably see more wins off of that stuff. So this is about keeping athletes healthy, and then performing better, and then keeping both parties, coaches and athletes, in a better spot.